I came home early that evening, not for any particular reason. I think I just needed quiet. The office had been loud in that invisible way, not with sound, but with people moving around me without really seeing me. I told my manager I was feeling off, and she waved me out with a "get some rest," and a look that said she didn't want me there anyway. The sky outside was still clinging to that pale winter blue. My boots tracked in a bit of road salt onto the rug, but I didn't bother taking them off. I walked through the house like I was drifting through someone else's home. Too many lights off. The smell of her perfume lingered faintly in the hallway, as if she'd just left. That's when I saw her laptop. It was still open on the coffee table, screen glowing softly in the dark. She'd left in a hurry, clearly. The cushions were messy, one of her earrings still on the armrest. I would have ignored it if the screen hadn't blinked just then, like it was waiting for me. A message had come in. Simple, centered, bold. Ricky Fire. 9 p.m. tonight. Hope you wear what I like. That was it. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't open the thread. I didn't click or scroll. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there, in the half-lit room, watching that single sentence flicker in the bottom corner of the screen like it belonged in some movie I hadn't agreed to be in. First, I thought I'd misread it. Maybe Ricky was short for someone she worked with. Maybe a joke from a group chat I didn't know about. I gave myself 3 seconds to believe that. 3 full seconds to pretend there was nothing to worry about. Then I heard the front door. She stepped in like it was any other evening, heels clicking neatly against the tile. She had that same casual confidence she always carried after she'd spent time alone. Or what she told me was alone. Hair done up. Lipstick darker than usual. Black dress with the low back. The one I'd once told her made me nervous when she wore it out alone. She used to laugh and kiss me on the cheek when I said that. This time, she didn't even look surprised to see me. Just blinked once. "Oh," she said, setting her bag down. "Didn't know you'd be home this early." I didn't answer. She glanced toward the living room and saw the screen. Still glowing. Still displaying that message. Her expression barely shifted. Just a flicker in her brow. Then that familiar shrug. "Oh, that," she said. "It's nothing. Ricky's just a friend. He sends dumb stuff all the time, don't take it seriously." I didn't move. I think I was waiting for something else, an explanation, maybe. Something with weight. Something real. She laughed, brushing past me toward the kitchen like it was all perfectly normal. "You're overthinking again," she added, pulling a bottle of water from the fridge. "Seriously, you've got to stop doing that. It's exhausting, right?" I stood there, still watching the laptop, watching her silhouette reflected in the screen. A few months ago, I would have believed her. Maybe not fully, but enough to let it go. Enough to pretend. I'd done that before. I'd let things go because I wanted to trust her more than I wanted to face the discomfort of asking questions. But this wasn't one of those times. She wasn't dressed for a casual dinner. She wasn't dressed for a girl's night. She was dressed for someone who had asked her to wear what I like. And she had. She looked beautiful. Stunning even. But not for me. Not this time. She stood in the kitchen, drinking her water like this was just another Thursday night. Her back was turned like the conversation, if we could even call it that, was already over. And maybe it was. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice or accuse. I didn't storm out or slam anything. There was no fight to pick. Just a quiet understanding that something had already snapped. Probably long before that message ever popped up. She looked back at me once, halfway through tying her coat, and asked, "You good?" It was the kind of question people ask when they already know the answer doesn't matter. I nodded, just once, and she left. The sound of the door clicking shut was louder than I expected. I stood in the quiet house, alone again, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the thermostat, the silence where conversation used to live. I walked over to the laptop, stared at the screen again. The message was still there, still blinking, still open. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I sat down on the edge of the couch, hands clasped loosely in front of me, elbows on my knees. I could hear the faint echo of her heels on the driveway fading into the night. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't wonder where she was going. I already knew. After the door closed behind her, I didn't move for a while. The laptop screen had gone dim again, like even it was tired of trying to show me something I wouldn't admit to myself. I sat in the same position, elbows on knees, staring at the same blank patch of rug, as if something would change if I waited long enough. Nothing did. The house was quiet. Too quiet. That silence used to mean comfort. A sign of peace, of being home. But that night, it just pressed in from all sides, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. The lights above the island flickered on as I passed, and I noticed her coffee mug was still in the sink. Lipstick on the rim. Same shade she was wearing tonight. For some reason, that made my chest tighten more than the message had. She had time for makeup, time to pick the right dress, time to answer Ricky Fire, but not enough time to rinse out a mug. I stared at it like it was a clue in some mystery I'd been too stubborn to solve. And the truth is, I had known. Not the whole story, not the names, not the late-night addresses, but pieces. A scattering of things I had filed away as nothing, because I didn't want them to be something. I remembered the first time she took her phone into the shower. It was around 8 months ago, a Sunday morning. I had made pancakes like I always did when I was trying to reset the week. I heard her phone buzz in the bedroom while she was getting ready. A message came in, nothing obvious, just a preview. See you soon. I called out to let her know she had a text. She came back in with a towel on her head, snatched it up, said it was a delivery update, and then walked back to the bathroom, phone in hand. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Or maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to deal with the thought of what it could mean. I told myself I trusted her. Told myself people take their phones everywhere now. That it didn't mean anything. But that was just one piece. There were others. Like the time she said she had to cover weekend shifts for a coworker, but never seemed tired after them. Or the increasing number of trips to her mom's that never came with photos or calls or stories. Or the way she started flipping her phone face down anytime she was near me. Or how our pictures slowly disappeared from her social media, not all at once but gradually. A photo archive going quietly extinct. Posts that used to say, "My favorite person," turned into posts about solo sunsets and generic quotes about choosing yourself. I remember the first time I asked about it, jokingly, back when I still joked about things like that, and she said she was just curating her feed. Curating. Like I was clutter. I stared at the fridge. On it, we used to keep all these little memories. Photos, postcards, ticket stubs. Now there were only 2 magnets holding up a dry cleaning receipt and a grocery list. She used to laugh when I added something to the fridge. Said I was cluttering the vibe. Eventually, I stopped putting things up. I guess I stopped adding to a lot of things. At some point, the distance became normal. We stopped watching shows together. She stopped asking me about my day. Our conversations turned into logistics, who's getting groceries, what's for dinner, what time's your meeting tomorrow. It wasn't a sharp break, just a slow fade, a quiet pulling away. But I didn't say anything, because that would have meant confronting it. And confronting it meant admitting that something had shifted, that maybe I wasn't enough anymore. So I filled in the silence with distractions. Work, podcasts, cleaning, tasks. Anything to avoid the thought that maybe I was alone, even when she was sitting right next to me on the couch. And now, tonight, the picture had finally completed itself. That message, that one stupid line from Ricky Fire, was the last piece. The one I'd been pretending didn't exist. The one that clicked into place with every lie I'd tried to ignore. It wasn't even the message itself that broke me. It was how familiar it felt. Like I'd been bracing for it all along. She wasn't coming back to me tonight. Not really. Her body would walk through the door eventually, but her mind was already somewhere else, with someone else. It had been for a while, and I had let it happen. Not because I was okay with it, but because I didn't know what else to do. You don't think about how much you're willing to tolerate until you realize you've tolerated too much. I went to the bedroom, not to sleep, just to get away from the laptop, from the kitchen, from the shadows of our relationship that clung to every object in the house. Her side of the bed was still made. It always was lately. I sat down and stared at the closet. Half of it was hers. I could name almost every dress in it. I'd bought some of them for her. I'd waited outside dressing rooms. I'd held her heels while she changed. Now I looked at them and felt like I was staring at a stranger's things. I walked over and opened the door. It smelled like her perfume. The one she wore tonight. Sweet, floral, with that sharp little citrus twist she always said made her feel powerful. Powerful. That word rang in my head. Was that what this was? Power? Control? A way to reclaim something she thought she'd lost by being with me? I didn't know. And maybe I never would. Back in the living room, I grabbed my jacket. I needed air. The kind of air you only get at night, when the world's quiet and nobody expects anything of you. I didn't take my phone. Didn't need music or apps or messages. Just needed distance. I walked the block twice, maybe 3 times. Thought about nothing and everything. By the time I got back, the house was still dark. Still empty. She hadn't come back yet. I didn't wait up. Not really. I sat in the kitchen just like before, in front of that same untouched coffee mug. The one with the lipstick stain. I stared at it for a while, then finally rinsed it out. Not for her, for me, because I didn't want to look at it in the morning. Didn't want to start the day with another reminder of a truth I could no longer avoid. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay on my side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times I dismissed my own intuition. All the moments that didn't feel right, and how quickly I'd buried them. I used to think love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, trusting until proven wrong. But now I wondered if love also meant paying attention when things started to feel off. If maybe trusting someone shouldn't come at the cost of trusting yourself. By the time the sun started leaking through the blinds, I already knew what I had to do. This wasn't just a phase. Wasn't a misunderstanding. Wasn't a mistake I could talk my way through. This was a pattern. A choice. A version of her that had been growing quietly behind my back while I held onto the ghost of who she used to be. The picture was complete now, and I couldn't unsee it. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I told my boss I had a personal matter, and left it at that. There was no follow-up question. I guess my voice sounded final enough to buy me the space I needed. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. Maybe closure. Maybe proof. Or maybe just something that would stop the questions from echoing in my head every time I looked at her. But the one thing I did know, I couldn't sit around and play dumb anymore. I'd done that for too long already. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and sat in my car for a while before pulling out of the driveway. I still had the name, Ricky Fire. I still had the time, 9 p.m. No address in the message, but there was a restaurant she used to mention a while back. One she said was too expensive to try, but probably incredible. Came up a few times, always in this dreamy way, like she'd already been there in her head, like she was already saving the memory for someone else. I Googled it. There it was, sleek, modern, and expensive. Reservations were booked weeks out, unless you had someone on the inside or knew which manager to call. It sat tucked between office towers in the business district, surrounded by valet spots and glowing signs meant to be seen by people who didn't check their credit card balances. It was exactly the kind of place you take someone when you're not afraid of being seen, but only if the person you're trying to impress isn't your spouse. I drove downtown and parked across the street, close enough to see the front entrance but far enough to disappear into the background. My car windows were tinted, but I still slouched down in the seat, just in case. I got there early, 8:35. The sky was turning the color of steel, and everything felt distant. The lights, the sounds, even the people walking past, laughing with friends, holding hands, checking phones. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. And then, at exactly 9 p.m., she appeared. Not a minute early. Not a second late. Same dress from the night before, black low-cut. The one she said was too much for a casual dinner. Her hair curled the same way. Lips painted with the same fire-colored shade she said made her feel confident. She stepped out of a rideshare, alone, and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, scanning the crowd. My pulse hammered in my ears. Then he showed up. Ricky, I assumed. Tall, broad-shouldered, confident in that way that screams practice charm, the kind that fills a room before you even notice him standing there. His blazer was fitted, hair clean and sharp, shoes expensive. He didn't look like someone fumbling through a casual date. He looked like someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. He walked straight to her, smiling like he'd done it 100 times. She smiled back. Not the polite smile she gave strangers. Not the neutral one she gave me when we were pretending to be fine. This one was soft, familiar, like it had been waiting for him. Then, casually like it meant nothing, his hand slid around her waist, and she didn't flinch, didn't step back. Instead, she leaned in. They spoke for a second, laughed at something, and then, as if choreographed, he kissed her. Right there on the sidewalk, in full view of everyone. No hesitation, no fear, and she kissed him back. I didn't move. I didn't grab the door handle. Didn't storm across the street. Didn't shout or cry or even breathe. I just watched. The way she looked up at him. The way he rested his hand on the small of her back. The way they walked into the restaurant like it was just another night in a long string of nights they'd spent together. It didn't feel like a beginning. Felt like a routine. I sat there for 10 more minutes. Just long enough to make sure I hadn't imagined it. Long enough to see them disappear into the soft glow of chandeliers and curated jazz and overpriced cocktails. Long enough to realize that everything I feared had already happened, and had probably been happening for a while. I didn't need to see what happened inside. I didn't need a photo. I didn't need a confrontation. The story had already been written. I had just refused to read it until now. She had rewritten her life and removed me from the narrative. I started the car, pulled away from the curb, drove in silence. There was no scream trapped in my throat, no rage boiling over, just this deep, hollow ache, like something had been pulled out of me, and I was only now noticing the gap it left behind. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Every red light felt personal. Every quiet stretch of road gave my thoughts more space to speak, and they didn't hold back. I remembered her laugh from earlier, the way she touched his arm, the way she tilted her head just slightly, the way she used to do with me, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. That laugh used to be mine. That look used to belong to me. Now it belonged to a man named Ricky. I parked in the driveway and just sat there. The porch light was off. The curtains were drawn. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. I had changed. What I knew had changed. What I could unsee no longer existed. I walked into the house, took off my coat, sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the blank television screen. It showed a faint reflection of myself. Tired eyes, clenched jaw, hollowed-out chest. I didn't recognize the man looking back. And yet I did. He was the version of me who finally saw the truth. The one who didn't need to ask anymore. Didn't need to guess. Didn't need another lie dressed up as a joke or an excuse. I knew. That's all there was to it. She had chosen someone else. Not in a moment of weakness. Not as a mistake. But as a pattern. As a choice. Over time, in silence, without apology. I stayed up until I heard the door unlock. Close to midnight. Her heels clicked softly across the floor. She paused when she saw me sitting there in the dark. "Oh," she said. Like she hadn't expected me to be awake. "Didn't think you'd still be up." "I know," I said. Just 2 words. That's all. Nothing more. Her lips parted slightly. She didn't ask what I meant. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. But for the first time in months, I saw something flicker across her face that I hadn't seen in a while. Not guilt. Not regret. Just stillness. Like she had nothing left to say. Or maybe like she realized I finally did. I stood up, walked past her without touching her, without looking at her, and went to bed alone. I didn't speak to her the next morning. I woke up before the sun. The house was still. Her side of the bed hadn't been touched. I don't know if she stayed in the guest room or just never slept. I didn't care enough to find out. There was a time when silence between us meant comfort. Familiarity. Mornings used to start with her murmuring something soft while half asleep, curling into my chest, stealing my pillow. But that version of us didn't exist anymore. That version of her didn't exist anymore. And maybe the version of me who would have fought for us, maybe he was gone too. I made coffee like I always did. One mug. Just for me. Didn't even glance toward the guest room. I don't think I was angry anymore. Not in the way I expected to be. I thought that finding out, seeing her with him, would send me into some kind of spiral. But there was no fire left. No yelling. No energy for a dramatic confrontation. Just a cold, clean break forming quietly inside my chest. By 8 a.m., I had pulled a suitcase from the closet. Not for me, for her. I moved quickly, deliberately. I knew where everything was. The closet, the dresser, the bathroom drawer full of her skincare products that somehow cost more than some of our appliances. I folded things neatly. I wasn't careless. No slashed clothes, no broken picture frames, no screaming into pillows. I just packed. One by one, I took her life out of mine. I even remembered to grab the charger she always forgot when we traveled. I set the suitcase by the door, grabbed a sticky note from the fridge, wrote 6 words. You can stay at his place. That was it. No, we need to talk. No long emotional breakdown. No begging her to explain herself. She'd already said everything she needed to, just not with words. I left the note on the suitcase and went upstairs to change. Put on a clean shirt. Jeans. Sneakers. I looked in the mirror and didn't feel anything. No shaking hands. No tears. Just a weird sort of calm that felt more like surrender than strength. It was over. The only thing left was to make sure she couldn't come back. I spent the next 2 hours canceling everything we shared. Subscriptions. Streaming services. Online grocery accounts. I transferred the electric bill and water to my name. Same with the internet. I called the leasing office and told them I needed to update the lease. No problem, the woman said cheerfully. Just need the co-signer's signature removed. She won't be living here anymore, I said. I'll handle it all going forward. There was a pause, and then she said, understood. I changed the door code, deleted her profile off the smart thermostat. She used to set it warmer when I wasn't home. Said she hated the chill. Now she'd have to adjust to someone else's temperature. It was strange how fast a life could be edited. Like she had never really been part of it, just an overlay I had grown used to seeing. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. A message. I'll be home late. Don't wait. No emojis. No explanation. Just that. I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't know what it meant, but because of how confidently she sent it. Like nothing had changed. Like she still expected to come home to a light left on, a warm bed, and someone waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I deleted the message. I didn't even block her. Blocking felt too emotional, too deliberate. I didn't want to make a statement. I wanted to erase the part of me that still thought I needed to respond. That night, the house was quieter than usual. Not just because she was gone, but because, for once, I didn't care when she'd be back. I didn't pace around. I didn't sit in the dark waiting to hear the garage door. I didn't text to ask where she was or when she'd be home. I didn't check her location like I had so many times before, telling myself it was just to make sure she was safe. I simply lived my night, alone. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like mine. I microwaved leftovers, watched a movie I knew she hated, left the kitchen a little messy, didn't care. I slept diagonally on the bed. No guilt, no hesitation. She didn't call, didn't text. Maybe she read the note. Maybe she hadn't come home yet. Maybe she'd walked in, seen the suitcase, and gone straight back to Ricky's place, or wherever she was building her new life. Either way, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't chasing the version of her I missed. I wasn't hoping for the woman I fell in love with to reappear. She was gone. And the one who stayed behind wasn't someone I recognized or wanted. The next morning, I walked downstairs, and the suitcase was still there, untouched. That told me everything. She had seen it, seen the note, and instead of fighting it, she chose to leave it there. That was confirmation enough. No calls, no confrontation, no shouting match in the kitchen, just silence. a shared understanding that we were finished. I thought about how breakups look in movies. Always loud, always dramatic. But in real life, sometimes they end quietly, like a song fading out. No chorus, no final verse, just static. I took the suitcase and left it just outside the door. Locked it, shut it, changed the code again. By the time I sat down at the kitchen table, the note was gone from the door. The suitcase wasn't. That part was still waiting to be claimed. I opened my laptop and cleared the shared calendar we used to plan everything on. Her yoga classes, our dinner nights, vacation reminders. Gone. I opened our shared photo album and hit Remove Shared Access. I deleted our Spotify playlists. Removed her contact from emergency services. Little things. Simple things. And yet every click felt like a small cut closing. It was a process of peeling her out of my life. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Like finally brushing the last grain of sand from your shoe after walking through a place that used to mean something. There was no going back. No conversation would change what I saw. No apology would undo the choices she made. The line had already been crossed. Not once, but over and over, quietly, behind my back. While I waited at home thinking, she just needed space. I had given space. Now I was taking mine back. 3 days passed. She never came back for the suitcase. I didn't hear from her, not directly anyway. Just silence. A heavy, loaded kind. The type that tells you everything you need to know, even if no one's saying a word. It was like we'd both silently agreed to pretend we were never anything to begin with. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But then the story started spreading. It began with a video. A friend of hers, or someone who used to be, posted an Instagram story from that same rooftop restaurant. The same night, her and Ricky, laughing at a table under those dim gold lights, faces close, arms brushing. I didn't follow the account, but someone forwarded it to me. Then another person did. Then 2 more. Suddenly, it wasn't just between her and me anymore. People saw. People whispered. At first, I thought maybe she'd be embarrassed. Maybe the reality of what she did would finally catch up to her. But I underestimated her. Again. Because the next thing I knew, she was the one rewriting the story. She started telling people, our mutual friends, her coworkers, even my cousin of all people, that we were on a break, that we had mutually decided to step back, that we had been emotionally distant for months, and had agreed to see other people while we figured things out. And somehow, in that carefully curated version of events, Ricky wasn't someone she snuck around with. He was someone she was allowed to see. Because I knew about it. Because I agreed to it. I remember reading those exact words in a text someone sent me. She said you knew about Ricky and were okay with it. That's when I realized it wasn't enough for her to move on. She had to be the victim too. She couldn't just live her new life. She had to protect the image. Had to make sure I came out looking like the cold, distant one. The guy who worked too much. Who wasn't emotionally available. The one who checked out months before she did. I stayed quiet. First, I didn't respond to the DMs. Didn't post a statement. Didn't share receipts. I figured, what's the point? People believe what they want to believe. But then the podcast dropped. She'd gone on some lifestyle show a friend of hers was launching, one of those empowered women talking unfiltered type of shows. And in the middle of an episode about reinvention and starting over, she told a story, a very thinly veiled one. She didn't use my name, smart, but the story was clear. She said she'd spent too long in a relationship that felt more like a cage than a partnership, that she had lost herself trying to be a version of someone else's dream, that she finally woke up and realized she deserved to feel seen. And the moment that line came out, I knew. She deserves to feel seen. It was the exact phrase she'd once said to me during an argument, months before everything collapsed. It wasn't just her voice in that studio. It was our life, being fed to strangers, reframed, rewritten, repackaged. She ended the story with a laugh, a real one. Sometimes, she said, you just have to start living for yourself, even if that means walking away from what everyone else thought looked perfect. They laughed. The hosts nodded. called her brave. Brave. That word nearly made me throw my phone across the room. The clip got traction. Someone tagged me in the comments. Not directly, but enough. You can see the guy she's talking about if you know where to look eyes. She deserves better tbh. Why do men think doing the bare minimum is love? Bare minimum. That's what I'd become in her story. Not the man who worked late to support her dreams. Not the guy who remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every allergy. Not the one who drove her to interviews, waited outside auditions, stayed up editing her portfolio when she wanted to quit. Just the bare minimum. That's when something inside me cracked. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to humiliate her. I just wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside my own head. So I posted nothing dramatic. Nothing angry. No name-calling. No vague threats or bitter captions. I just put up a quiet post. One picture. The suitcase. Still by the door. Still untouched. Still waiting. No caption. Let people draw their own conclusions. Then I shared a short story to close friends, just facts. Dates. *TS. The text from Ricky. The photo of her walking into that restaurant with him. A *T of the message she sent me the next night. Don't wait up. I didn't say anything beyond that. Didn't name her. Didn't tag her. Just laid out a timeline, bare, simple, clean. And then I logged off. A few hours later, I started getting messages. Some from people I hadn't heard from in months. Some apologizing. Some admitting they'd believed her version until now. The friend who posted the rooftop video messaged me and said, "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I thought you were cool with it." Others reached out to say they'd seen the shift in her. Long before I did. One girl, someone I barely knew, said, "She told me you guys were just roommates. I should have known better." That was the hardest part. Realizing how far back it went. Realizing how many people she'd been preparing for the story she wanted to tell. I went for a walk after that. Not to clear my head. There wasn't much left to clear. I just needed air. Noise. Movement. Something other than the weight of her words sitting on my chest. When I got home, there was a package on the porch. No note. No name. Just the suitcase. Dropped off like a forgotten delivery. I didn't open it. Just put it in the hall closet. Out of sight. That night, I got one last message from a stranger. Anonymous account. No profile picture. Just one line. "You're not the only one she lied to." I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because deep down I already knew. This wasn't just about me anymore. She hadn't just left. She had rewritten the ending and painted herself as the hero. But not everyone believed the fairy tale. And some people, like me, were done being extras in someone else's story. I didn't scream. Didn't post rants or expose her in a dramatic thread. I simply laid the truth out, quietly. A timeline. *TS. Messages. No insults. No names. Just facts. People started to see the pattern. The friend who'd posted the dinner video deleted it and apologized. A woman messaged me anonymously, said she'd been dating Ricky too. That he and my ex had been involved long before we broke up. I didn't reply. I didn't celebrate. I just called my lawyer. Filed the papers. No letter. No final words. Just her name in black ink and my signature on the last page. That would be my closure. A month later, her new life unraveled. The podcast clip got flagged for defamation. A brand she was negotiating with pulled out. Friends distanced themselves. One sent me a voice note. "We're sorry. You were right." I didn't gloat. I just breathed. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't heavy. I wasn't waiting for her to come home or explain herself. After 18 years together, she walked away like she'd won. But I was the one who had peace. Because this time I wasn't waiting at all.